Food is such an important ingredient in how we make the world a better place, because we all eat every day. So therefore, how we eat and what we eat and how it's produced has a fundamental impact on how we continue to exist on this planet as not just humans, but as an ecosystem overall. There's no one part of the food system that you can fix independently. So you can produce great food, but then how do you make sure that's affordable and accessible to everybody? Also, the market gardener needs to make a living. You know, you can't just produce the food, you have to also think about where that fits in the food system and how we create a healthy local food ecosystem.
Why did it? If somebody's got to earn a living, and it's all I know. There was 140 coos at its peak and about 450 ewes. Today there's 22 cows and about 90 ewes. I decided that I was cutting numbers a bit in response to high fertiliser and input prices and reducing profitability, with a nod to trying to be more aware and less damaging to the farm around us. The first thing we were told when you came home, if you can leave it better than you got it, and just mind you're only looking after it for the next generation. It's not really yours. With that in mind, you think, well, what was better? In the 60s, 70s, to a degree, it was produce. It was drained, it was reseeded, it was as much production as you get. It has now moved on to about the environment and the climate, but we still need food. There's no reason why we can't have both, and that, I think, is the regenerative and sustainable approach. In a month's time, you could come here and I could show you 150 different species of grass and plants. It would be a shame to see that disappearing. And if I can still produce food and make a living round about having all this, then that's all the better. Because I do think there's a value in this. And maybe that's my wee bit of, destroying the place we sit on.
It's not easy to get people to take climate action, because for a lot of people it sounds like either too big a thing for them to cope with, or it's something they can do but not very effective, like switching off the lights and all that kind of thing. But it struck me a long time ago that one of the things that people have absolutely no choice over whatsoever is eating. Most people in this country are lucky enough to have 3 meals a day, and with that you have choices about where your food comes from. And that kind of got me going on the idea of what can we do to encourage people to really look at, first of all, food miles, getting our food more locally, and secondly, how that food is produced in the first place, everything that goes into it, and understanding and knowing how the food is produced.
We're on Rainton Farm, which is just outside Gatehouse of Fleet. It's about 800 acres, and we diversified the farm about, almost 30 years ago now, where we started to make ice cream and we developed a visitor centre. And then about 10 years ago, we started to make cheese. We called ourselves the Ethical Dairy. It's about good animal welfare, it's about encouraging biodiversity, it's about giving your staff fair work. It's not just homing in on leaving the cows and calves together, although that's the bit that just really captures the imagination. But you've got to kind of look right across the board of all aspects of what you're doing. The diversification was to make the farm more secure. There was always this threat that farming subsidies would be going soon. And we're still at the stage 30 years later where you're thinking farm subsidies are going to be going soon. Ice cream at the time seemed to be the best fit for where we are. Then about 15 years ago, we started to look much more at the loss of biodiversity, climate change, resource depletion, and how we fitted into that. And one thing we can say about ice cream is it needs so much energy. And cheese was made here in the 1860s. And that was when there was no electricity initially. So the focus really for the past 10 years has been to get a variety of cheeses which can be stored using very little energy, and almost the opposite of ice cream. And we can post it around the country, which you definitely couldn't do with ice cream. So we've kind of cut out the middlemen in some ways.
years ago we moved to Dumfries and Galloway, having never farmed before. We were completely naive. There was no farming in our backgrounds or family or anything. So we kind of started off as hobby farmers, keeping sheep as pets, and the more we learnt about farming and food production, the more we learnt about how intrinsically it was linked to the environment, and how what we do on the farm has such a huge impact, not only on our farm but on the wider landscape, and also has a huge impact on the quality of the food that we produce as well. We keep a mixture of pigs, sheep, chickens and geese, and from them we produce wool, meat and eggs. And we try and sell everything that we produce on the farm direct to our customers, and try and keep it all local and focus on low food miles.
Well, I finished uni, I was studying carbon management, so I'd been learning about the impacts of climate change, and growing local food is one of the best ways that we can reduce our own carbon footprint, and there was a distinct lack of local food available at the time.
Yeah, we weren't entirely happy with the amount of pesticides and herbicides that seem to be on fruit and vegetables these days. So here, there's no pesticides, there's no herbicides, there's nothing bad on your food at all. It just feels so much better to eat food that you know where it's come from.
We grow vegetables and wildlife friendly plants and flowers and herbs, and we keep chickens on a rotational grazing system, and we've got Highland cattle.
I guess it's about respect for the animals, really having to process that idea of, if we're going to eat meat, really knowing where our meats come from and what sort of life that animals had, and knowing that it's been treated with sort of care and respect.
One of the main questions that people ask is welfare of animals. Are they looked after? Are they in a natural environment? Are they happy? Are they having a good life? That has become, I think, increasingly a thought in the public mind. I mean, we're both first generation farmers, so it's like Mount Everest of a learning curve.
My background is actually land management and conservation. That's what I studied, so the farming aspect is new to me.
I used to work on a dairy farm as a kid, but then been out of farming for decades. So yeah, getting new ideas or just re-evaluating what I'm trying to remember from 20, 30 years ago is pretty important, really.
This community garden started off as a passing thought when I was walking back and forward up the railway line, which has now materialised into something that's quite special. It's a lot of wasted land that's not being used. And alongside with the rugby club itself, which is like a community-orientated organisation, I felt like bringing more community here, people that wouldn't be part of the rugby club or part of the gym. And you bring a very diverse group of people, from primary school children to people who are retired. During COVID, it became immensely obvious that there was a huge disconnect between people and where their food comes from. When Tesco's shelves were empty, people thought they couldn't get food. And I'm like, I grew up in farming, I grew up in this area. And the concept that people didn't understand that there was another way of doing things could not have been hit home more hard. And that's not a comment on them, that's a comment on our way of life now. Yeah. And the idea that people don't know that they can have food that's good for them, and it's not just good for them on a nutrient level, it's good for them for their mental well-being as well, because if you plant something, a tiny plant or a seed, and you grow food out of that, the degree to which that is freeing and empowering is mind-blowing.
Anne had the idea before I was even in the picture, and they needed a young person to manage the garden. She said, "Beth, you're a young person." I said, "Anne, I know nothing about gardening, and I'm not touching no slugs." And I said, I would give it a go. Because it's next to the gym and it was for something good, and there was a strong emphasis on it being youth focused, and I suppose that's more where my interest lies, in what the garden can offer young people.
I'm interested in all of it, but obviously can't do everything. So all we've been able to do is offer our garden to a group of people to come and volunteer and find out about sustainable food growing on a small scale.
We're in Whithorn and this project is called The Croft. We're trying to demonstrate to people how to grow anything, not just fruit and vegetables, using permaculture type methods. So here we've got a forest garden, and we also have no dig beds, and we're very much focused on making sure that we don't damage the environment or impact on wildlife with what we're growing.
I'll come for my cake.
I think there's an element of community and being able to talk to like-minded people and feel that they're contributing to improving the environment and hopefully combating in our small part of the world the climate crisis.